Hey, let's run. You are so energetic. Where do you get all this energy from? From food. Can you explain me how food gives us energy? I actually don't know that. Then let's go to our teacher. Ma'am, can you say how food gives us energy? Yes, of course. The food gives us energy through cellular respiration. What's that, ma'am? It is a series of chemical reaction which happens in the mitochondria of our cell. Here in this process, the glucose present in our food is been broken down into carbon dioxide, water and ATP, which is the energy carrying molecule in the presence of oxygen. Now let's see its formula as well. Do you know when there is a lack of oxygen in our body, the glucose is been broken down into lactic acid and produces a very small amount of energy. How do the lack of oxygen happens, ma'am? When you run or play, you can't breathe properly to take enough oxygen to do the respiration. That's when a lack of oxygen occurs. Let's see its formula as well. Do you know, in yeasts, the cellular respiration takes place in the absence of oxygen. The glucose breaks down into ethanol, carbon dioxide and produces some amount of energy. This process is called fermentation. Ma'am, what's the most common way in which glucose breaks down in our body? Most commonly, the glucose breaks down in the mitochondria of our cell in the presence of oxygen into carbon dioxide, water and energy. Ma'am, can you please tell me in detail about it? Yes, why not? The first process is called the glycolysis process. In this process, the glucose is been broken down into two molecules of pyruvic. In this process, ATP molecules are produced and some amount of NADH is also produced. The second process is called the preparatory reaction. In this process, the pyruvic molecule from the previous process is being converted into acetyl CoA, producing CO2 and some amount of NADH. The third process is called the citric acid cycle or also the Krebs cycle. It is also called the Krebs cycle because it was being discovered by the scientist Hans Krebs. In this cycle, the remaining carbon from the initial glucose get oxidized, producing CO2, ATP molecules and some amount of NADH and FADH2. The fourth process is the electron transport chain. In this process, the most amount of ATPs are produced. Now, what happens in this chain? In this chain, the NADH, FADH produced in the previous processes give up their electrons, and these electrons are stored in the form of energy by various proteins embedded in the membrane of the mitochondria, and this energy which is stored is being later used to produce ATP molecules. Do you know this process also uses oxygen which combines with hydrogen to form water? It's really interesting, ma'am. Now it's clear. Yes, ma'am. It was really an interesting thing.